van der Stoel Human Rights Award. She's also a writer, poet, and spoken word artist, in the capacity of which she is a celebrated name on stages in Belgium and beyond. Her work has been published in many literary magazines. She writes columns for major Flemish newspapers, and she has been nominated for several prizes. Yusra's work writes from an intersectional feminist perspective, and she centers on the relationship between language and violence. She explores the embodied wounds of coloniality, racism, and sexism, alongside with the possibilities and politics of connection, healing, and joy. Her work is both praised for its literary qualities and its contribution to pressing debates on social justice. And she will be publishing a collection of poetry very shortly by a major Dutch publisher in the course of this year. So Yusra, welcome. Then you have next to her Rim Batal. She was born in Casablanca, now currently living in France, if I'm correct. She graduated from the Paris School of Journalism. She left the traditional media around 2012 to fully dedicate herself to poetry and photography. She calls herself an unwavering feminist. We would like to hear more about that in a while. In her art, she explores the female body, sexuality, and social tensions in Morocco and France. She published her first collection of poetry in 2015, titled 20 poèmes et des poussières. Her second collection, Latex, was published in 2017, followed by Transport commun in 2019. All these poems and collections were written in French. Yes.
Mesdames et messieurs, la présentation se déroulant en anglais, nous vous présentons la rencontre, variation poétique en diaspora, où Rachida Al-Mrabet invite Yusra Venfre, Nisrin Mbarki et Rim Batal. Profitez-en.
Thank you very much. I will try to speak a little slower. So she also published a novel, Je me regarderai dans les yeux. Then next to Rim, we have Nisrin Mbarki Ben Ayad. She is an Amsterdam-based Dutch-Moroccan poet, literary translator, and she works across different languages and literary spaces. What's also very special is that she is a newly appointed poet laureate of the Netherlands for this year and next year. So congratulations very much. It's like an ambassadorship. Very much congratulated. She writes poetry, fiction, theater, and she is also a literary translator. Her work is rooted in Dutch, Arabic, and Mazight, and as a literary translator, she primarily translates female voices from Arabic and English into Dutch. In January 2022, she debuted with her poetry collection Oeverloos in Dutch, which means shoreless. The collection was nominated for the C. Budding Prize for Best Poetry Debut and was also nominated for the prestigious Herman de Koning Poetry Prize. Her debut novel, Kookpunt, Boiling Point, was published in 2025, and in this collection of 7 stories set in many locations across North Africa, she introduces a wide array of characters, all of whom are linked to the history of colonialism. This book forces readers to reflect on Eurocentrism in an original way. For instance, by showing us a world map on the cover of the book from the atlas completed in 1155 by the cartographer Muhammad al-Idrisi, that unlike the well-known Mercator projection of the world, card accurately reflects the actual size and proportions of countries around the world. For example, this card shows that Western Europe fits almost entirely within Algeria. So welcome to you all. I'm very glad and happy to have you here. And I must confess that when I read your poetry, it has left me deeply shaken, um, because it gives words to something that is very difficult to put into words, something that is also very difficult to address directly. And I was wondering, since you have this audience in front of you, which will, inshallah, read your poetry very soon when it will be translated in all the different languages of the world, what should we give this audience to warn them when they read your poetry? Is there a kind of a content warning that we could put on your poems? And if yes, what should that be?
Assalamu alaikum. Well, in my case, I think I don't know if I should call it a warning, but the reader should know that I write in 4 languages. So even when it's translated, you will always keep 4 languages. So for now, my work is mainly in Dutch, but there is also some Derija, some classical Arabic, some French, and some English. And when translated, of course, let's say to French, I change the sentences that are in French into another language. When translated to L'Arabia, I translate the sentences that are L'Arabia into other languages. And also in my poetry, I try, even in translation, I try to keep the multilinguality because basically ما عرفتش كي نهضر بواحد اللغة. It's very complicated for me باش ممكن زعما ولكن it's very challenging حيت كنحس براسي بحال ما كاملاش. So switching between languages is kind of is what I am and who I am. That's how I think, that's how I dream, that's how I write, that's how I translate, that's how I live, that's how I love, that's how I do everything. So Dutch, English, Français, Darija, وبالعربي كمان. So that's the only thing that you should know. For the rest, try to surrender because I think it demands a lot of my readership because I touch upon so many things. The language is not complicated, but there is a lot of history, there is a lot of coloniality, there is a lot about being a woman of color in a European context. So it's kind of complex, معقد, but in a positive way. I
This
think that would be it for me. That
Yeah,
would be like a warning or,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, lovely. Thank you. I'm curious to hear about Rim. What would be the content warning?
The content warning would be about the fact that my work is often seen as erotic, and I think it's not. At least it's not my intention. I talk about sexuality in my poems, that for sure, but from a political perspective, and I think that if I don't know if we read it as erotic, even if erotism is political as well, maybe comment dire, enlève quelque chose بحال كي نقص من
Yeah.
l'importance de ce que j'essaie de faire.
It denigrates
Yes, a
the
little bit,
text. Yeah.
little bit, but at least it's not the precise way as I want it to be read and seen.
Yeah. Thank you. So the sexuality is also political, of course. Yeah. Yusra.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for having me. If there would be a content warning, I think it also depends on which reader. To be honest, for the white reader, which is a big part of our readership in Belgium and Europe, I would ask them maybe rather than warn them for openness, for a willingness to be self reflexive, to sit with discomfort. I think often discomfort is not easy to sit with, so be willing to sit with the discomfort instead of pushing it back onto the writer, and be curious about why discomfort arises. So that's something I would ask from my white reader. And in general, I think I would, yeah, maybe it's not a warning, but a question. I think sometimes of the words of William Butler Yeats, who in one of his poems writes, "Tread softly, because you tread on my dreams." And I think sometimes we consume poetry and literary works in a very consumerist fashion, while we are so vulnerable in what we're sharing. It's often years and years of work, and the way I think also sometimes critics and reviewers easily consume material. So I would not warn them, but ask them to tread softly, because you tread on my dreams.
Oh, so nice. Thank you, Yusra. Thank you. To stay a bit with you, Yusra, you are a lawyer and we share that background. And what is, of course, something that comes out of your work is that, yeah, well, human rights law influences a lot your political language and themes. So I know that you, like most of us writers, citizens, are deeply disrupted by the ongoing genocide in Gaza. And I was wondering, it reminded me of the Jewish German philosopher Theodor Adorno, who said right after the ending of World War II that to write poetry after Auschwitz is barbaric. Meaning that poetry cannot adequately express the reality of the industrialization, of the murder of million and million of peoples. But you address these atrocities in your poem, Let Me Barbaric. And my question to you, Yusra, is how difficult is it to write poetry in times of genocides, and what is the function of poetry in barbaric times?
And thank you, Rashida. I think it's a very beautiful, also very painful question. A question that I still ask myself every day, to be really honest. One day a little bit more to the surface, other days it's in the background. But I can only say that it has been really difficult for the first year since October 2023. I was not able to write. So I was just not able to write. I was completely blocked. The anger, but mostly the grief, really more than anger, the grief was so, yeah, literally paralyzed me. So I couldn't write, I couldn't really speak either. It was only after a year that things started changing. And I think for two reasons, I was the anger and the sadness were just too big to be able to create. But also, of course, at that point, when you see such industrial scale violence, unspeakable violence, really, that transcends all language, language feels completely away. But I think what brought me back to language, because at a certain point I was not even sure if I could return to language. That's how deep the crisis was. It was really a crisis on all levels, because I'm a human rights lawyer, so my belief in human rights broke down, my belief in language broke down as well. But what brought me back to language was the realization that violence, specifically colonial violence, is obviously about land and resources, but as Edward Said has always shown, actually, before land, it's always about language. Colonial violence starts in language and the way we speak about the other. That's where the violence starts. Before it takes any other shape, it begins in how we speak of the other, with capital O, how we think of the other. And so it is language that brought me back to language, in fact. And the fact that it can cause violence, that a language is used to demonize certain people, to vilify, to other, but it's that same language, precisely because it can be so harmful, it can also be restorative. From the same medium can be used to repair, to restore dignity. And yeah, finally, what brought me back to language was the realization that even in the midst of despair and unspeakable violence, Palestinian writers themselves write. So who am I to give up language if they don't even give up language?
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
think for me, Rifat al-Harir, Allah yarhamah, maybe you know him, um, the poem that went around the world.
Yeah.
He wrote it a
Yeah.
few weeks before he was killed. So how can you find that energy or that hope maybe or that sumud,
Yeah.
as they so beautifully say it? So the fact that they could, if I felt it as a way of tribute to those writers to not give up language. If they don't give up language,
Yeah.
why should I?
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. To continue on that question, Nisrin, and also in Rim's work, yeah, there is this relationship between language and violence, and um, can poetry interrupt or transform this violence, Nisrin?
Um, I personally, I'm looking at the translator because نسيناها.
You want to translate?
Is there
Is
anybody
it too much?
who doesn't understand English? كاين شي واحد ما
Je peux aussi
كيفهمش؟
traduire moi-même si c'est.
Mais
Si
s'il y a personne, peut-être c'est pas la peine, mais s'il y a des gens كاين شي واحد ما كيفهمش لونجلي؟ Non. واحد الانسان. واحد الانسان. There's one man over there. Some more people? Oui, maybe that's nice. No, it's really إلا كان واحد الشخص راه تقدري ترجمي ليه.
Yeah, go
كوم
next to him.
سا
Yeah.
ما غاديش نضيعوا بزاف الوقت باسكو
On n'a pas beaucoup
اصلا
de
ما
temps.
عندناش الوقت.
On n'a pas beaucoup de
وسمحوا
temps.
لينا.
Ouais.
Vraiment سمحوا لنا. Okay, so to go back to the question of violence, I would say personally, the only way to deal with violence for me is writing. There is no other way I can deal with anything that is violent, whether it's on imperial colonial scale or on the street or even violence against females. I cannot I I can't wrap my mind around it except when I write. So that's the first part. Writing is for me a way to deal with everything, not just violence, anything that happens in life. And the second part, I think poetry is kind of a way to resist violence as long as we can write poetry, which for me is kind of the essence of the beauty of language. That's poetry. بحال قلتي الروح ديال اللغة for me is poetry. As long as we can write poetry, as I can write poetry, it's a form of resisting violence, but also dealing with violence. And then there is a third part in it. I don't think I have ever written a poem in my life that doesn't contain a certain form of violence, because it's like beauty and violence are two sides of the same coin. There is always like the shadow side of beauty, the shadow side of art, the shadow side of whatever we do in life. And that shadow side for me is connected to violence. So I think I try to deal with it in different layers, but the main thing is resistance in the form of writing, literary writing, but also translation, because I translate poetry من العربية الهولندية, and I translate mainly, I have been translating Palestinian female poets for the past 10 years. So I was very, very much connected with that violence and with these women and their poetry and their literature. So even during the genocide, I was constantly translating as much female Palestinian voices as possible and publish them. And some would die, some are still alive. So that was also a way to deal with it. Like,
Yeah.
okay, keep the art keep the poetry alive, because
Yeah.
that's all I have.
Yeah, as a
ما
form
عنديش
of
شي طريقة أخرى،
resistance.
ما
Yeah.
عرفت شي طريقة
Yeah.
أخرى.
Yeah, it's nice to hear you say that it's a form of resistance. And Rim, you you started your career in journalism, and then you moved from that to write poetry and novels. Do you think that the form in which you express yourself is makes any difference in the things that you want to say to the world? What did poetry, for instance, allow you to say that journalism could not?
Actually, for me, it works as, from my perspective at least, as it does with Nisreen and different languages she speaks. Because I think that some of my poems still have some, I don't know how to call that, but some like a journalist methodology in them. When I write, I don't open my laptop saying that I'm gonna write a fiction or novel or a poem. The form arrives at the same time with the propos, the content. Yes, I want to write about. Every content and form are linked together from the beginning, from the second one. Um, that's what. Yeah.
Yeah, what's also interesting in your work is that you confront the intimate and the social tensions around women's bodies. So I was wondering, how do you navigate writing about desire, control? Like you said in the beginning, your work oftenly is misrepresented as erotic writing. So that's also a way to disqualify a work. So I was wondering, how do you deal with that? And are there things that you don't write about or you are hesitant to write about? Do you have a kind of strategy to get your message across?
In the beginning, I did not have any strategy actually. I was just writing, sending my text, from rewriting, etc., and then sending my text to my publishers. I had this very candid approach to literature actually. But now, yes, because after publishing many poetry books, many poetry collections, and a novel, I see how sometimes, because I'm a female writer from Morocco, living in France and writing in French. And France has sometimes some problems with Moroccan literature. So I always felt, and then even Moroccan culture, and so I find myself like trying to translate, explain things, etc. And sometimes trying to résoudre des misunderstandings,
Yeah.
to solve some misunderstandings in the way we read my books. Because when you're a woman qui est vue, qui est perçue, who's perceived as liberated, in France, we try to make you say things that you don't say about
absolutely.
your culture,
About
origins,
your
etc.,
community.
and which are not
Yeah.
true, en fait, about your community.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
always try to
Be
de
vigilant. Yeah.
rectifier, be vigilant, and try to explain, because sometimes even like people with like the best intentions and are in the audience telling me, yes, it's so sad, you're in Morocco, the women are like this and are like not treated well, na, na, na. And I say, okay, that's actually, it's the way you perceive these countries, like Moroccan country or Moroccan culture, and even like Arabic culture, if it does exist. And you say it as like a mass, and so you don't see the details, the
Generalize. Yeah.
nuance, etc. So I understand when you generalize, and then I swipe it to the other side, saying, for example, from the Moroccan perspective, people see France as a country of pedocriminality, because we have like Le Squarneck who raped like 300 kids. We have like these different affaires qui dans l'actualité, which are very recent. So like people from Morocco see all French people like rapists, and they are like, no.
So
They're
you,
super
you hold the
shocked.
mirror.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I hold that mirror, and
Mhm.
without saying it's a mirror, people understand that their perspective is wrong, and it's réductrice.
Yes, yes, yes. So by hearing you and also by your work, of course, it is very engaged. It's very, you have to take into consideration political context and your own positionality. When is poetry then, can poetry be something coming from joy, coming from what you really want to do? I mean, um, the question that I discussed with Yusra later, earlier this day, I asked her, imagine that the world was colorblind. Would you write a different kind of poetry?
C'est pour moi, c'est Yusra.
C'est comme vous voulez.
Ah, ok. Bah, tu veux? Maybe I won't write poetry. No, I don't know. Maybe if the world was colorblind, there would be still, we will still find something to divide us and to alterize the others. I don't know if alterize does exist or no. Ouais. Voilà, thank you. La licence poétique. So yes, I think I would write maybe differently, but still with the same verve and violence maybe. And actually, like since I published my first book, like everybody, like critics and the journalists were saying it's a very violent poetry. They say cru. I don't know how to translate cru.
It's raw.
Raw.
Yeah.
It's raw. No, no, no. But I don't agree with that actually, because what we call violence is that it's only the discomfort that you perceive from your maybe privileged position. Actually, what you perceive as rawness is just a different way to write poetry. It's a different proposition, maybe a new one that you don't know. Mais ça rejoint un peu what we say also about like African art, or like c'est ce brut, something like for
Yeah,
primary.
it's
Or,
not refined. It's
voilà,
not.
it's not
Yeah.
refined.
Yeah.
There's no culture behind, no
It's too
story,
direct.
no
Yeah.
history actually, and which is not true. It's just different. It's just a different and very personal way to think, to analyze the society we live in, and to translate it into poetry.
Yeah.
And as Yusra said, when you read poetry, you have to surrender. You have to accept what you're gonna receive, because it's a very different literature, because it's also always it's a way that, to build empathy with themes and with different forms that you don't, experience in your own body, and we try to give it to
To the
you,
world.
to the world, with our poetry.
Mhm.
Um, I think I would be writing poetry. I would always be writing poetry because that's the that's my most intimate but also honest way to communicate with the world. I'm not an extreme social person. I'm kind of, I like people, I love people, ولكن ما كنكترش معاهم. So كنبقى شوية بعيدة باش نلقى راحتي. I have friends here who know that. And if we meet كنتلقاو غير بجوج ولا ثلاثة باش ما نتلفش. So طريقة باش كنتواصل. Oh, I switched to English. Actually, Derijo English would be very comfortable for me. كاين شي واحد ما
Yeah,
كيفهمش Derijo.
you do what you feel comfortable with. Yes.
Okay, okay. So as I am, this is what I am. So باش نتواصل بواحد الطريقة اللي هي very honest و very intimate هي الشعر. شي حاجة أخرى كنجرب. I really try, but I don't succeed. I don't succeed to be intimate in talking to people, except when I write. And so I will always be writing poetry. That's just my way of communicating. And there is also, what was your question actually?
So the question was, would you be writing poetry if the world was color
Yeah,
blind, if there was no urgency?
there is always an urgency, and unfortunately, the world is not colorblind. I don't know what a colorblind world is. انا في هولندا كنبان لهم انسانه مغربيه عربيه مسلمه افريقيه شلحه، وانا كنحس براسي هولنديه، ولكن كي كيشوفوني هما ماشي كي كنشوف انا راسي. واخا زايده في هولندا وقربت 50 عام، واخا انا شاعره البلد، كيشوفوني بواحد الطريقه مختلفه. So they're not colorblind. And the other thing is I really try to stay away from الانسان الاخر كي كيشوفك و... وباغي تجاوبو عبر الكتابه ديالك. يعني غادي نولي انا كنكتب باش نجاوب الانسان. I will be reactive. I cannot be a reactive writer. I'm not interested in the white western gaze. I don't really I'm not interested. شوفوا مني كيما بغيتو كيما عجبكم هما، ماشي هنا. هما حنا نتوما، اصلا انا هما وانتوما وحنا، سو الدعوه مخلطه شويه. واخا قلت لكم هما راه هما هي انا وحنا هي هما. مهم. So that reactive way of writing is very complicated. It messes you up.
Exhausting also.
It's exhausting. You start writing things because you want to explain to the other, and I don't want that. I really try to stay honest with myself and with my being, which is already complicated enough. So yeah, I think that would be kind of a question of an answer.
Yeah,
I
thank
hope.
you. Yeah. Yusra.
I recognize a lot of what you both say. For me, the honesty with myself, unfortunately, would be to say that I do write reactively. I'm not at that point yet. It's my dream to be there, but I'm not there yet. I have internalized way too much. Racism finds ways to enter your mind. It's what Frantz Fanon, it's coloniality of the mind. That's how colonialism and racism works, and we are all victim of it. All, especially, in former colonial states like Morocco, we are all still colonial in our minds, if we admit it or not. At least I can only speak for myself. It's my dream to be where Nisrin is, but I'm not there yet. I'm trying to and that's also very confronting for myself, because I want to be completely rid of this wide gaze, but I know that it's inside me and it has damaged me. It has damaged myself, the way that I look at myself. I'm healing. I'm very much trying to unlearn and decolonize my body, my self image, who I write for. But unfortunately, I'm not there yet. And it makes me, it's very, very painful to admit that. But being honest with myself, I can only say, unfortunately, I do still write. Sometimes I detect it to explain, or sometimes I feel this poem is directed more towards a wide reader. Okay, and if I detect it, okay, I give space to it. It's not where I want to be, but some parts of me are still there. And it's my dream to come to a point where I can say that I completely write from a place that is completely healed from coloniality and racism. And maybe I don't know, maybe down the line I will be there, but I'm not there yet. And so from my writing is both reactive, it is, but it also tries to move beyond it.
Yeah.
And in a way, I also don't want to completely give up the reactive writing, especially the last 2 years. I was trying to move away from reacting, but then the world is on fire. The genocide is happening in front of our eyes. I cannot but react.
Yeah.
I have to react, even if I was angry. No, I don't want to react with my poetry. I'm writing an angry poem. I'm angry with myself for writing the poem. Oh my God, it's horrible. But okay, it's normal. This genocide is also not normal.
Yeah,
So
sure.
I allow myself to write reactively.
Yeah.
Let me barbaric. It's absolutely reacting.
Yeah.
But I also think it's more than that.
Yeah, it's a powerful poem.
It's also
I'm
more.
you should listen to that poem. It's really very it has a force that is really
And I also
undescribable.
think that sometimes it's not either or. There's work that is reactive. Like, okay, a lot of the work of Palestinian writers, of course, reacts to the occupation. Of course, it's a living nightmare, but
Yeah.
it's also much more than that.
Yeah.
It's also much. So I think that's important. You
It's-
know,
it's-
like
yeah.
I think of the poem of Rafif Ziada. You know, we teach life, sir. I don't know if you know the poem. Rafif Ziada, she's a Palestinian Canadian poet. It's a super, super powerful poem that has gone viral with 2 million views. And it's reactive, but it's also more than that.
Yeah, of course.
And I think it was Mahmoud Darwish who was asked in an interview, what if the occupation is over? What will you write about? And he said, I will write better. And I think that's beautiful,
Wow,
you
yeah.
know, because I think, yes, I react to violence in my poetry, but actually I don't want to. I want to write about beauty as well and love and to have
Yeah.
that space, but the world forces us to react.
Yes.
And I'm not gonna, for me, it's an illusion to be at a place where I don't react because the world that we live in does not allow me to do that. But okay, let me try to find ways to be reactive and more than reactive. So I think, yeah, same as Nisrin said, I will also still write poetry and in a more free way even.
Yeah.
But for now, we work with what we have.
Yeah, and one thing that we have also, all four of us in common, is that we write in the language of the former colonizers. French, English, Dutch. So it's very complex. It's very schizophrenic almost. How can we write about decoloniality when we have only the language of the colonizer to express ourselves? You know, there is Yassin Khatib who said that language is un butin de guerre. How do you, Katib Yassin, how do you stand on that?
I will answer briefly. French, le français, is a very beautiful language. It's a language in which I write, and I really love this language. For me, it is my literature language. I'm unable to write in Arabic, but French is not from French. The French language, le français, it's not la propriété, the property of French people. It's a beautiful language, and it's le fruit, the result of, you know, like a huge history, and hybridations as well. The contemporary French language is traversé by other languages as
Influences,
well,
yeah.
like the migration languages. So when I write in French, for me it's not the language of the colonizer. For me, it's the language of Rimbatal. And in one of my poems, I wrote like I'm writing dans la langue de Molière, because like it's the expression we say, like le français c'est la langue de Molière, and I wrote dans la langue de Molière et de Batal, because for me it's as soon as I write and I produce, you know, cultural material, literary material in that language,
It's yours.
it's my language. Point.
Thank you.
Yeah, I find it it's a complex question. It's a really, really complex question, because, you know, if you are born in a country like me, I was born in Holland. That's my first language, together with Darija. So for me, it's like for Reem, that's my language. It's not اللغة ديال الهولنديين، لا لغتي أنا، لغتهم حتى هما، ولكن أنا لغتي. So and it's kind of a tool for me also to change the language, for an example, by the neologism. So I invent new words in Dutch that don't exist, and it's like, but this word doesn't exist. Well, from now on it exists, because I try to also enrich the language. But I would also like to come back to the introduction, because I remember ملي كنت كنكتب القصائد غير باللغة الهولندية، ناقصه شي حاجه. It took me 10 years باش نفهم شنو اللي ناقص. Really it took me a long time. وما عرفت شنو طرا. واحد النهار كنت كنكتب على والديا، وكنسمع الوالده كتقول لي ليها هادشي غير بيني وبين راسي. و وكتبت ليها ومن بعد الوالد قال شي حاجه بالمراكشيه كتبتها، وقلت هاد القصيده اصلا ما غاديه فين، غتبقى غير ديالي. ليها ومن بعد سمعت ماما قالت شي حاجه بالشلحه، تما قفرتها كتبت تيفيناغ. انا والصديق ديالي محمد السعدوني قلت لي محمد واش هكا كنكتبوا هاد القضيه بتيفيناغ؟ قال لي ها كيفاش؟ وقلت هذيك القصيده اصلا ما غاديه فين، غتبقى غير عندي. وتنشرت ديك القصيده and I got so much reactions. وقبل ما ننشر الكتاب ديالي الاول I already decided that's it. هذاك الشيء اللي كان ناقصني هاد 10 سنين اللي فايته. And it kind of felt like a monk. So I have a rule for myself. كنكتب وبأي لغة سمعت الكلمات كنكتبهم. Which unfortunately is also French. For me, I say unfortunately because French is not my language. It's not my first, not my second, not my... It's la langue de Rime et Molière. Non, ah oui, Rime et Molière. Molière, non, Bataille et Molière. C'est la langue de Bataille et Molière. So it's even French, it's English, it's there because that's what I hear and also what I speak during the day. But دخلت لي حتى الفلسطينية حيت صحاباتي فلسطينيات. I speak الفلسطيني أكثر من الدارجة معهم حيت they're around me all the time والعائلة بعيدة. So all these languages somehow إلا جمعتيهم وعجنتيهم مع بعضياتهم ولاو هذيك هي لغتي. That's why I cannot ما نقدرش نفلتريهم. بحال كنقول لا السوسية ممنوع، العربية حرام، فرونسي سي با اكسبتي، انجليش از كولونيال، هولندي اوكي اش غندير مع لغتي الاولى هذيك؟ نو اي انكلود اول اوف ذم ومع بعضياتهم كيخلقوا واحد اللغه اللي كنلقى انا براسي كنلقى الحريه التامه باش نكتب. That's the only way to do it. That's why when translating كيتصلوا بيا المترجمين كيقول لي دابا واش غنديروا؟ Like yeah, what are we gonna do? Do we keep all the languages? If it's translated to French, do we translate the French into English? دابا كيترجموا هذا الكتاب بالعربيه والسي اللي كيترجموا مصري وتلف، ولا كيترجم الدارجه. قلت لي راه الدارجه ما يمكنش تترجمها، راه غادي نقفروها حيت ما جاتش. ولكن المصريه ديالو ما جاتنيش مع اللغه الهولند. المهم هذه this is the state of being. مشاكل mais en même temps الحريه التامه.
So you
Because you
create
can
your own
choose.
hybrid language by inserting all different languages.
It's not inserting, it's accepting by
that,
letting
yeah.
them be.
Give
Because
it a place.
no,
in the
just
text.
letting them be
Yeah.
because that's how I think, that's how I work, that's how my mind works. من قبل كنت كنقول لهم لا، دابا لا سير انت العربيه لا الشلحه لا فرونسي لا، ودابا
Yeah.
they are free. بحال تلقتي الدراري وكيجريو شي ملعب
Uncontrolled.
وكيخصك غير تكونتروليهم فين غاديين، ما يهربوا ليك ولا شي حاجه.
So nice. Yusra, you want to add something to this?
Do we still have time? What time
I
is
don't
it?
know if do we have time?
I'll get a hint
We have time. Oh, we have time.
For me, absolutely, I'm aware of this ambiguity that I'm writing in a language that, in a way, is not a language of my choice, and it's also not a language of my heritage. And what I find difficult, besides the fact of the power dynamic, I'm very much a performance poet, so my work is very embodied, very oral. I'm working on my first book, but the last 10 years, my poetry was on stage. And so for me, musicality is super important in my work. And I will not say that Dutch is a poorer language than Arabic or Darija, but it's definitely less musical, definitely. And so this is, for me, in my experience, Dutch I miss sometimes the musicality that I find in Fosha or in Darija, and so this does feel like a limit. And that's why sometimes I wish I was more fluent in Fosha. I wish, but I am not fluent enough to write poetry. So it's definitely something I miss, but I try to work with the limitations. I think that's also part of the work of a poet. You work with the limits of what you have. And for me, musicality is not per se one of the strongest features of Dutch language, especially not in comparison to Fosha. So I try to create music with a language that doesn't feel very musical, and that's something that challenges me. So I try to work with it, but it's something I find sometimes difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So perhaps we have time for one last question that I would like to ask all of you, because you poetry is in your veins, is in your soul. You would continue to write poetry even if we live in an ideal world. So that's very reassuring. But nevertheless, I would like to close this session with a question. Did poetry ever cost you something? And if so, what is that? Who would like to answer that question?
My autonomy as a woman, and it's a very materialistic, for really materialistic reasons, because I decided to write only, and only be a writer. So I write poetry, I perform poetry, and it's not the the most well paid job in the world. So for many years I was married, so I felt like, even if like the father of my children didn't make me feel that way, but I felt that the poetry cost me my autonomy as a wannabe emancipated woman. I was in, and I am in every cell of my body. I do what I want. I speak about what I want. I write about what I want. But still, being not able to have my own space, my own flat, my own things was very painful for me. But I accepted that for a while to write poetry.
So material
Ouais.
situation was not really ideal. Yeah.
In the first poem I wrote as the poet laureate of the Netherlands, mm, was published in February in the newspaper front page, and it says, um, "La parole has a price, and all my languages have a price, and I pay the price." Um, I don't know exactly what it is, but there is a lot that it costs you a lot to. I don't do anything else. I only write. I write. I write. I write. I write every day, every day, every day, and I live from my writing. And I'm a single mom, so you can do it too, Rim. And I translate, and you have two. I only have one. So writing and translating, but it's, if you're a critical writer, which I am, not only a poet, of course, I also write novels, academic articles, theater. So I write everything. Uh, but the main thing is poetry. You pay a price as a female poet who wants to keep her independency at all times. I pay a price because I don't do any commercial writing, for an example. I don't write for certain people. I don't write for certain newspapers. I don't write for. There is so many institutions, organizations that I don't want to write to and I don't want to be affiliated with, and that's the price I pay. But that has nothing to do with poetry. That has to do with being critical and choosing with whom you work, because I don't want to be utilized. I don't want to be instrumentalized. And as soon as I do that, I work with certain people I will be, and I will be framed, and I will be the Moroccan writer. No, 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 I don't do that. It's me who decides who I am. It's not you. So that's the price you pay. Basically, everything around you and constructing is again as a female poet of color in Western Europe, you
Yeah,
prize. And you're
definitely.
also cancelled by certain
Yeah,
people. You're
yeah,
yeah, I think
yeah,
it's that kind of price that I pay, not any
yeah.
yeah.
So I would love to give Yusra the last word, and then we can close
Yeah.
this meeting.
I will
Yes.
keep it short. I think, I recognize a lot what my colleagues say, but I have to add, I definitely have paid a very literal material price,
Yeah.
especially since the last 2 years, because of my critical stance. I don't think being against genocide is critical. I think it's like the bare minimum. But okay, for many people it's critical. And I notice since that I've spoken out, I get much less asked by the big institutions who are just afraid.
Yeah.
And it has a direct financial impact
Of course.
on, and I'm also on my own single and so on. So it's definitely, I pay a price with poetry that stands for something in a field that claims to be free
Yeah.
and uncensored. And here is the place where we can speak freely. But actually, it's not the case.
It's not the
Absolutely
case.
not. And I have felt it the last 2 years,
Very much.
painfully
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
So
So I would like really to thank you very much for your contribution, and I would like the public to give those poets a warm applause. Thank you very much,
Thank you, Rashida
Nisrin,
Lamra.
Rim, and Yusra. Thank you.